Overlord was the most significant Allied operation of World War II, leading to the liberation of Northwest Europe. But the conventional view of the build-up and control of forces through the years has become confused, and in particular the role of Southampton has become marginalised. However, an account has come to light that was written at the time by a serviceman with the US Army that tries to set the record straight. Called Forgotten Port, Staff Sergeant Erwin Swerdlow, writing in the US Army Transportation Journal in 1945, says Glasgow, Liverpool, Belfast, the Bristol Channel ports, and even Southampton in some measure have lapsed into obscurity. The harbours of the United Kingdom base, great and small, became the forgotten ports. It is perhaps because of his own sense of injustice that he highlights some of the critical aspects of Operation Overlord and how these so-called forgotten ports contributed. Staff Sergeant Erwin Swerdlow describes how planning for D-Day was started in December 1942 and how the landings were to be radically different. Overlord, however, was designed to effect a landing upon a shallow beach, this involving the use of amphibious craft. Ships were required that could be beached. Overlord was strictly a shore-to-shore proposition. He goes on to recognise some more forgotten D-Day ports. POL is the American abbreviation which refers to gasoline, diesel and other types of fuel which were of course essential for the war effort. In planning Overlord, it was decided to use ports for specific commodities. Llanelli, Sharpness and Port Talbot were used exclusively for POL. Penarth and Fowey were ammunition ports. Telegraph poles were collected at Swansea and heavy engineer and out-of-gauge equipment was stacked at Cardiff. He goes on to explain how Southampton was instrumental in the turnaround of Liberty ships when at least 20 sailed daily. Following D-Day, vehicles and drivers were given top priority. For this purpose, a fleet of 112 specially fitted Liberty ships went into operation from south coast ports, primarily Southampton. Each carried over 100 vehicles and approximately 20 ships sailed daily. Loading continued around the clock. At the end of June, 20 additional fitted Liberty ships were provided, bringing the total to 132. Later, as our forces poured onto the continent, Liberty vessels for the transport of cargo entered the picture. Soon, over 60 of them were operating a shuttle service from the UK to the beaches and ports. He also describes the hierarchy and organisation of US ports in the south of England, and that the 14th major port headquarters was located at Southampton. Early in May, a month before D-Day, Southampton and its litter of sub-ports became the focus in the preparation for the great outbound movement to the continent. These sub-ports, operated by the 14th port with headquarters at Southampton, included Portland, Weymouth, Truro, Plymouth, Falmouth, Dartmouth, Hale, Totnes, Hamble and Poole. Hamble, an outport of Southampton, was so important to the Allies as a source of POL products that it even gets a special mention. But Staff Sergeant Erwin Swerdlow saves his best description till last. Southampton, of course, was prepared at all times. When Patton was ripping up Brittany, Southampton was called upon to furnish critical supplies with the necessary vehicles and drivers. Within 24 hours, depots were ransacked and quartermaster, truck company, transportation corps drivers lined up for the job. 3 LSTs were loaded. They headed for Brittany. A destroyer escort accompanied them part way and then left them strictly on their own. When the craft beached somewhere in the vicinity of Morlaix, surprised Frenchmen hailed them as their liberators. Several hours later, Patton's unit showed up. Southampton had outstripped even the Lightning Patton. Patton was the most feared of the Allied generals, and his Third Army embarked at Southampton. The article goes on to stress the volume of traffic dealt with at Southampton. In the lead up to D-Day, Southampton was the busiest port in the UK and the third busiest in the world. It is estimated that no port was comparable to Southampton over the period of Operation Overlord, when loading and unloading was at its most critical. When VE Day came, 1,800,000 personnel had been embarked from Southampton. Weymouth, Portland had embarked another 500,000. Between D-Day and VE Day, Southampton had loaded out 240,000 vehicles, and Weymouth, Portland had shipped another 143,000. The deadweight tonnage of these vehicles was approaching 2.5 million. In the same period, tonnage of vehicles, cargo, POL products and all other types of cargo handled at Southampton exceeded 2.75 million deadweight tons. Southampton and other 14th port installations handled nearly 4 million tons. Between June the 6th and May the 8th, Southampton handled approximately 8,000 vessels. All the subports together with Southampton handled slightly over 9,500 ships. Over an 11-month period, the 14th port handled almost 28 ships a day. Weymouth loaded 2,300 LSTs and 1,500 LCTs. Southampton loaded 1,500 LSTs, 1,700 LCTs and 1,070 motor transport vessels. Although it is not generally recognised, British Major General Sir Nigel Holmes, speaking in 1945, said, "Without Southampton we could not have done D-Day," and to commemorate the greatest achievement in the history of the port, there is a plaque next to the door of a wing of the Civic Centre used as the headquarters of the US Army during Operation Overlord.